Good afternoon and welcome. I'm Jennifer Caniglio with CCBJ, and we're thrilled to be working with our partner, Tonkean, to present today's webcast, Getting Started with AI Agents in Legal. Our distinguished speakers are Frances Pomposo, Senior Director of Legal Operations and Technology from Cisco, Sagi Eliyahu, co-founder and CEO of Tonkean, and Mike Pierson, North American Head of Sales and Engineering for Tonkean. Welcome, everybody. Today's agenda will highlight everything you need to know about AI agents in legal, including when Sagi will separate the hype from reality regarding AI agents in legal, as well as break down what transformative end-to-end AI legal agents look like. Frances will give her working examples of how she used Tonkean process orchestration over her career and how she's thinking of utilizing AI in the legal operations moving forward. And Mike will give us what legal AI agents powered by end-to-end agentic orchestration look like and what can we do during his demo. And then we'll just take some questions from the audience, if that works for everybody. We do encourage you to ask questions throughout the presentation, as well as fill out the survey with your feedback at the end. And if you're interested in the materials, you may download them using the blue paperclip icon, which is located at the bottom of your screen. And I want to remind everybody that the responses from our panelists are their opinions and their opinions alone. And now it's my pleasure to pass it off to Sagi. Sagi?
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We thought it's best to start with really trying to define agents for a second. I know there's a lot of noise outside everywhere you look about AI and then more recently agents. And so it was important to, before we jump into demo and talk about real life scenarios, spending 5 minutes, 7 minutes, maybe talking about the differences. Before I jump in, just maybe a quick description, if you may, of us as a company. If you haven't heard about us yet, my name is Sagi. The company is Tonkean. We've been at this legal world for at least 5 years now, and longer in process orchestration as a whole. We see ourselves as the #1 enterprise orchestration platform, specifically for large enterprises, where we bring a frictionless intake experience, as well as orchestrating processes across the different tech stack. And then more recently, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later, is really our agentic AI capabilities and how it can transform departments like legal, but also we work with procurement, finance, and IT. Like I said, we've been at it for a while now, and have a really strong understanding of what is possible versus what is a hype. And this is kind of where I wanted to start. So first, let's talk about why legal AI agent in general, but specifically for legal as well, why I think they are worth the hype. So first of all, what are agents? So we know obviously AI is not a new thing. It's been developing and improving for decades now. I think it got back to everyone's mind. Obviously, it's almost 2.5 years ago now, where ChatGPT came to the scene, really showcasing this GPT large language model concept. There was definitely other known models out there. If you use Netflix recommendations, or you use Google search, there's always been different models that have been used, translations and so on. But the large language models was this new concept that really opened up a whole new type of tasks, more than most people realize possible, and really took the industries and the consumer, honestly, by storm. But agents are relatively more recent development, if you will, and conceptually they're slightly different than what you would see in a ChatGPT type of use case, and they really are, you can say, adhering to 3 different concepts that are slightly different than just a direct chat. First of all, they are goal-driven and not necessarily answering questions, right? Answering questions might be part of it, but they are built conceptually to help solve a task. So they have a goal, and then they might do a lot of different things in order to achieve that goal. Second, they are intelligent, but also are able to integrate with other data sources and other concepts, and not only the knowledge that they have as part of their model. And then, of course, at the end of the day, they are meant to execute instructions that are beyond just the sort of like, again, what you ask for it, but actually to achieve that goal, use different tools, different capabilities, and enable sort of like a system that can handle real life, unexpected, unpredictable roadblocks. Those three together are not trivial things to achieve, and they're bigger than the model itself. And that's but with them they bring something that ChatGPT and alike tools are unable to achieve by themselves, which is the real promise of us having sort of like a co-working, or I don't want to use the word agent again, but essentially a co-working agents, sort of like digital entities that we can leverage in the way that people work, versus yet another iteration of the same software that is now just has a chatbot on it. And so one thing that I like to kind of highlight is those two differences. So when you think about agents, when you're trying to understand what does that look like, okay? So if we align on the fact that in theory that it needs to be stronger than a chatbot or a traditional automation, and become more of a companion, something that we can really delegate work to in an autonomous way, what is the right way to almost like check off things and understand whether something is indeed an agent, or is it just something that it's a same thing, like they say with the lipstick on a pig kind of thing, right? So there's a quick checklist here that I find useful. For example, if an agent, quote unquote, if something that someone called an agent only works within that same system, then that's not an agent, that's an automation, right? We talked about it. An agent needs to be autonomous and needs to kind of work across different things to act more like a person. Like if you would hire an intern, you would give them access to different systems and you would expect them to work autonomously. So same system, it's not an agent, it's more like an automation. If it's only accessible through chat, also not an agent, more like a chatbot, right? We expect agents to be able to work wherever we are. Some might be chat, some might be something else. If an agent is only reactive and not proactive, then again, it's not an agent, it's more like a chatbot, maybe also predefined automation. But really the idea is give them a task, give them a goal, and then you expect them to go and work on it also in the background, right? So maybe it's a recurring goal, or maybe it's a goal that takes a long time. And then if the steps are pre-configured, so if of course you want to give policy and directions and a process very similar to how you would do with an employee, right? It has to be an org chart, there has to be a structure, it has to be do's and don'ts, and there has to be, in certain cases, preference of how, again, that's what a policy is, right? Of how we want things to happen. But that's different than a pre-configured 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 that are just technically equivalent to an automation. And so again, if that's all it is, then it's not an agent, it's a chatbot and automation. And to be clear, chatbot is not a bad thing. Automation is not a bad thing. There's a lot of value in them. So this is not to dunk on those. Actually, it's the opposite. It's to be able to have the kind of like conceptual tools to distinct what is what. Maybe you don't need an agent, right? Maybe you do need, maybe your problem is just an automation problem or a chatbot problem. And then last but not least, if that a solution, quote unquote, agent cannot use tools autonomously, and we'll see this in the demo later, then it's not an agent, it's a chatbot. Really, the key differentiation of an agent is you don't prescribe and you don't script out exactly what's happening at every junction. Instead, you give it a goal and you give it the tools, and the instructions are more like a policy or sort of a compliance checklist. And from there, you trust it to be able to choose which tool to use when in order to achieve that goal, and include all the best practices of what you would do with the human. So this is kind of like something you take a screenshot of, something that you come back to. Hopefully, this is a good kind of like, again, 7-8 minutes to just align on what is what. So now when we think about, okay, how do we start using agents for legal? How do we start bringing this into our day-to-day? We are speaking the same language. And then to kind of like summarize the 5 key points here, and what we think makes legal AI agent enterprise ready. First, they are really working across everything within your tech stack and the different teams that are involved. Just like when you hire a person, again, you give them access to the tools that they need to have access to, as well as the communication tools to work with other teams. They are accessible, similar to an employee, in all different channels. If you are an employee and you want to work with this solution, you don't want it to be something you need to learn where to go, how to go. If you are used to sending emails, Microsoft Teams, Slack, you can just continue to do that. They are proactive and autonomous, like I described. And then something that is very important that I haven't touched on, true sort of like useful agent. This is something we saw early on when we first launched agent. We kind of launched an agent, or the ability to have like a front door, which is powered by AI, and AI automation, and automation is powered by AI and other things. But when we launched the agent, we immediately saw that the most power you can get out of those systems in a real life scenario is to have multi-agents. So you'll see that too, but really the ability to say this agent is specialized in a certain area, not a task, but a specific area, really distinct, information that they have access to, different instructions or kind of like policies that you give to it, really makes all the difference. Having multi-agents work together provides a lot higher quality result, and with a lot more compliance and structure. And then, of course, that leads me to the last one, which is the guardrail controls that allow for that all to work together. Obviously, in legal, we don't want hallucinations. We don't want things that we can't control. So how do we balance those two things? Is where a platform like Tonkean comes in, and hopefully you'll see all of that in the demo. Come out of the demo with examples for all of that. And to finish off this section, sort of like borrowing from Mike times later, Tonkean orchestration engine is really what sits in the middle of it. This is what we've been doing for many years now, and we were able to integrate with all the different systems across the legal tech stack and other. And then on top of it, we have different solutions. LegalWorks is our sort of like legal intake and orchestration, so like lifecycle management, matter management solution, as well as other solutions we have for other departments. But really, the agents are sitting side by side to that, and are using different skills to interact with your system. They're able to do things like creating contracts, reviewing contracts, accessing external information, for example, validating the company address and whatnot, and really kind of the different things that you would have different people do. And then defining those agents is something that we bring out of the box, and a customer can also define themselves very easily. And then all of it is accessible through a front door that, again, can happen everywhere in the web, in different communication tools and so on. That is for my initial part, and then of course I will come back to questions and all of that and see more through the demo.
Oh, thank you, Sagi. That was really informative, especially if our audience is not super familiar with agents and just ChatGPT. So I'm sure that checklist would be really helpful. And just a reminder, everybody, if you don't need to take a screenshot, you can just download the presentation using the paperclip icon at the bottom of your screen. Anyway, it's my pleasure to kind of introduce Frances as a customer of Tonkean. Frances, I have a couple questions for you. Obviously, you've had an impressive career leading legal operations for some of the world's most innovative organizations. Can you give us a little background on your career and what was your path to Cisco?
Yes, definitely. Thank you, Jennifer. I started off in legal operations at Adobe, and I had the benefit of kind of coming up under one of Clock's co-founders, but also seeing a very mature legal operations department kind of run at scale, which is super rare even today, but to be able to kind of see that firsthand right out of college, jumping into legal operations, that's really where I started out. The timing was perfect too, just because I was able to see from kind of the ground up a really big historic business transformation when Adobe was transitioning from perpetual licensing to subscription services, and the impact that legal operations and legal as a whole as a business partner has on that. After that, I transitioned into my role as head of legal ops and chief of staff to the general counsel at Lyft. This was a really great experience because it was during their hyper growth phase, and then building and transitioning into Workday's legal ops team, where I had a similar role as senior director of legal operations and also chief of staff to the general counsel. I started the legal ops team there from zero, and then being able to kind of scale high impact legal teams while maintaining headcount proportionally is something that I think all legal teams are facing right now more than ever. And then most recently, I served as a VP in legal ops and chief of staff to the GC at Splunk. And I helped scale our legal team there and navigate our acquisition, where we were acquired by Cisco, and the integration, and also serving as Clock's board treasurer. I've been on the board with Clock for a couple years now. And then now at Cisco, I'm responsible for our technology architecture within legal and our legal internal AI strategy. So this is super relevant to everything we're talking about.
Yeah, and when did you begin to see the potential of workflow automation and process orchestration technology in legal ops?
So I actually started seeing this really early on, and I'm going to kind of date myself because a lot of it was manual through like SharePoint or Microsoft like automation functionality in like 2013, which is in no way near where it's at today. But if you've been in a legal department or in a law firm, even like a small mom and pop shop, like there's a real realization that legal processes are very manual. And if you think about the legal industry as a whole, part of the beauty of practicing law, in my mind, is that you have that rigor and knowledge, and it's so human to human. But there are also a lot of behind the scenes things that are just very manual, take up time. They don't add value. They're annoying for attorneys. They're annoying for anybody in a legal department. And there's risk associated with just bespoke processes and veering off of that when they could be automated and orchestrated consistently and at scale. So one of the things that that jumped out at me right away was we used to do manual source code license reviews, where you would basically go through and match a source code license to the actual code itself. If you had process or orchestration tools as well as automation, there's so much time and people and headcount that would have been just freed up to do more efficient things. And I knew, and it sounds cheesy, like that there had to be a better way. There just wasn't anything at that point in time. So that was really where I saw kind of the potential, not the realization yet. And then really kind of going through and iterating on this. So in most of my roles, what we've done, and some attorneys don't love it, but it's basically doing like a time audit where you can see like even just the high, low value generalized, how people are spending the time in your department. It's jarring to see the results, because you will see that people are spending time, and these are very impactful, brilliant people that could be focusing on like big picture company issues, and they're spending time manually extracting information, going from system to system, doing things that could be orchestrated by an agent or a tool. So those are all really just huge opportunities for automation, and that's really where I saw the opportunity.
Perfect. I'm sure everyone at Tonkean's skin is crawling when you talk about the time audit and how much it actually takes time to do everything. Now, our audience is going to be made up of legal operations and legal departments of all sizes, from big to your mom and pop 1 to 2 person departments. This is a huge question, but what are the most pressing operational challenges that perhaps led you to these innovations, other than your time audits and all that kind of stuff? Just some nuggets for the audience. What can they take away from this?
So I think some big picture items are just around the legal landscape is changing so quickly, and there isn't a scalable way or a single solution to keep up. You're also facing challenges with budget, regulatory changes, all of these different things. And legal is a business support function. So there's constant conversations and I think attention that needs to be paid to scaling, and also like enabling legal departments to be able to have like the right people doing the right work. So I think that's a really good litmus test generally, is to say like, do we have the right people and are they doing the right work, regardless of what stage of growth that you're at? So I think that's something that most people in legal ops, or honestly in any business operations unit, can relate to. And I think that's where tools and topics like agentic AI, orchestration, that's where all of them come in, is the ability to kind of handle those at scale. And I'll get into this a little bit later too, but just around not having to fit your tool so custom, to be able to kind of work across whatever your situation is, from your tech stack or processes or change management. Having a tool like Tonkean, for example, that allows you to kind of adapt across the board and in the future. So the other part too, at a high level, is thinking about like leveraging technology that you would be able to use, but also excel with 3 to 5 years from when you're implementing it. So that really does give a competitive advantage to customers, companies as a whole, to be able to say like, you're not necessarily locked into something, you know that the platform has the ability to do that at scale. Those are some good things to think about generally.
Right. And why Tonkean? What problems did they specifically solve for you guys, and how were they a fit?
So I think Tonkean's business model has not changed, but like there's a number of different areas and sweet spots that they can help service in a legal department, and also procurement, all of those different areas across the board. So I think having that flexibility, again, to adapt is really great, but also I first started encountering Tonkean in my time at Workday, where I was building kind of a legal operations tech stack from scratch, which is a really great and cool opportunity because you can be picky and you're also not dealing with a ton of tech debt and like designing for what you want. You have the ability to choose things in a more scalable, thoughtful way. So when we were building our tech stack kind of from the ground up, we needed a way to kind of orchestrate workflows and intake, but in a way that was low to no code, that didn't require us to go to our business technology team. Not that that's bad, but there were certain changes where, like, if you're using ServiceNow or another tool per se, you may have to actually go to your development team to make simple UI changes or to change a word, depending on how your company permissions these things. That's not the right work with the right people. So we really wanted to choose a tool that allowed us to be nimble and also solve a number of problems, even problems that we didn't know that we really needed to solve yet. And that's where Tonkean came in. So in legal ops, it's really important to be thinking about not just individual tools, but how to make your tech stack and tooling work together intelligently. And that was something that Tonkean has allowed me to do at a couple of different companies that I've been at. It also allowed us to work with our existing systems across platforms. And it was really crucial because if you're coming into a company, obviously they have existing tech stack, even if your legal ops team doesn't. So you don't want to be a bottleneck. You don't want to force people to change their processes if it doesn't make sense. So having an orchestration platform that doesn't need people to change and can work around that and execute whatever policies or procedures in place really does add a ton of value right out of the bat. The low to no code was super key, just giving us agility to adapt. And then it really just iterated from there. And like I've said, we've used it at a couple of other companies that I've been at as well, but that was really the starting point of engaging with Sagi and the team overall.
That's perfect, especially low to no code. All right, let's get to AI and the AI agents. I know you haven't implemented the agents in your work yet, but why at a high level are you excited to, and what do you see the potential to be within Cisco?
So AI agents, there's a ton of hype around, and I think it was really great that we had the overview at the beginning. I know it's a lot of information, but really there is so much. If you really dig into what a lot of people are doing right now, they're not doing agentic AI, they're using chatbots or just automations. And again, that's not bad, but I think the potential really is, it's a crucial moment for legal ops and technology, but just technology in general, because it honestly makes a number of things possible that weren't before. So it's kind of like an iPhone or like internet moment really for legal ops, because you can scale consistently if you use an enterprise grade tool and you're not continuously asking for more resources and investment. And that's crucial in the kind of business environment right now. So it gives people the ability to kind of think about automated tasks to automated reasoning, which I think is a really cool concept for legal departments in particular to think about. And also looking at kind of that next evolution in scale for legal teams. So it is some time off, I think, as far as execution, especially when it comes to enterprises in particular, on really unlocking the value and being comfortable with risk when it comes to like full scale agentic AI across companies. But I think it really does allow legal teams to scale and enable with legal that expertise and decision making, that judgment and execution to policies, procedures. So this isn't about like taking unduly complicated risks. Like there's judgment associated with all of these. And I think that's really great for legal departments to be thinking about. They also can have the ability to kind of embody institutional knowledge. So I think that's a really great concept that I've been thinking about is like if a senior attorney were to leave, potentially like their judgment and decision-making patterns typically leave with them, as well as like their work product normally. AI agents can capture and like codify and scale that, but also like automate and streamline onboarding, or handle routine decision-making where it's constantly just the same standard things. And then at whatever point the company is comfortable with, depending on their risk and policies or procedures, you can have oversight on like the final product or the sending. So there's ways to make sure that companies are comfortable with what truly is kind of autonomous or being executed independently versus what are those human intervention or interaction points that you want that present those checks and balances. So I think really there's a ton that this could unlock for legal departments, because so much is either holistic policies or processes that are pretty standardized, or the ability to at least introduce those points where it makes sense. And that adds a ton of value at any company at any point in time.
Right. Well, like I said, we have very different sizes of legal departments listening on today. And for those on the fence, excuse me, what do you think is the most important for legal ops teams to be open to in adopting AI in their work broadly?
So I think from a skill set perspective, again, legal teams, as far as like their background and like certifications and knowledge, it really is at an inflection point. I would say it is a non-negotiable. Most jobs that you're seeing in legal operations technology, they're going to have as a job requirement some experience or exposure or even experimentation. And I get that there's different opportunities at different companies, and different companies may be at varying levels of kind of maturity with that. But you can take courses on LinkedIn Learning, or you can use like ChatGPT on your own to experiment, and just that's going to be key. So I really do think it is a non-negotiable. Throughout legal, like my career in legal ops, I've seen, and most people have, like regardless of what, if they're in legal or just operations, how technology adoption kind of separates high-performing teams from those that struggle to keep up. There's legal ops teams that a couple years ago embraced cloud platforms, like the transition to SaaS. That was a huge kind of milestone. Workflow automation, data analytics. Those companies that embraced those concepts early on are the ones leading their organizations, or that kind of pillar or market share. The ones that waited are still kind of playing catch up. So AI really is kind of that next frontier for legal professionals. And the only way, honestly, that you can scale and excel with what's going on with resourcing, budget constraints, but also being able to do anything at scale and identify patterns, risks, processing vast amounts of information. Those are all things that are going to be pretty standard regardless of what company that you're at. And the only way you can really tackle that is with AI. And it really is a force multiplier for people. So if you're thinking about that, my advice would be, if you haven't started experimenting with AI or learning about the concepts that were touched on at the beginning of the webinar, start digging in. You can pick one like high volume, low risk process and build an AI solution. You can test what works, what doesn't work, what your organization needs, what matches their risk profile, and kind of what their appetite at the point in time. And again, those that do that will be the ones keeping up, and also like with the potential to excel long term. And it doesn't have to be some insane multi-million, billion-dollar thing. It can just start very small so you can get comfortable with it and see what it is and what it isn't and what works for you.
Right. Sagi, I see
want to
you
add,
shaking your head. Go ahead.
Yeah, if I can, like, I want to like put a magnifying glass of this last paragraph from Frances, because it wasn't that long ago that people were not using Microsoft Word, were not using email. You don't even need to go to SaaS. It's like simple, like, stuff that are obvious to us right now. That's like, why, if you've done your research, if you search, how you're not, looking online about this client to get a little bit more information before you kind of go through your review process, for example, or whatnot, right? There's expectations that completely change when a big technology sort of like changes the baseline of what it is to do the work, right? E-signatures is another thing I wanted to throw, right? Like those, like some of those that really change how work is happening. And I cannot emphasize enough how fast or higher pace this latest changes are. It just doesn't make sense. Even internally, in our company, if someone produced any content, and that person, he or she did not use AI at all, whether to generate the first draft or to review and actually get like ideas from it, they're gonna be called out for it, right? And then later on, if it's not part of your process, you're gonna be called on. It's very fast because the quality of it is quite high. And if you don't know how to use it, you also don't know where to use it and when to use it. And so you might actually get the wrong impression of what it's good at or not. And I cannot, again, agree more than Francis. My parents and my grandparents even is able to use ChatGPT to answer things, right? It is not, it is the opposite of hard compared to other technologies. And it's a matter of actually taking the first step and understanding that it's not negotiable. Like you said, it's not something you can choose to not do or ignore.
Agreed 100%.
And Sagi, while we have you, can you tell us a little bit, connect the dots a little bit about how it is like working with Frances over the years, and Cisco and all of her
It's horrible.
It's horribly incredible. No, honestly, it's been great. So yeah, I think Frances, you kind of heard her background. Each one of the names in the screen is our customer, and so we're very fortunate to be able to work with Frances starting at Workday. I think it's a great example of where, Frances, you mentioned be able to kind of plan not only the technology but also the process to plan not only for today or tomorrow, but how does that look like next year and the year after that? Do we have the flexibility to do that? And that's the definition of being strategic, right? And so being able to work with Frances and her teams over the years helped us shape really what is the value we bring to the legal landscape, but really stress test our solution. So it was awesome to be able to do that and bring a lot of value, which is honestly the kind of the most important thing at the end of the day. So it was truly a pleasure.
Thank you.
Well, I think now we'd like to all see this in action, correct? I think it's time to pass it off to Mike for a quick little demo of how Tonkean is working and how it can work for you. Mike, I'm going to pass the reins.
All right, thanks. That's my cue. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen and confirm you are able to see the Tonkean AI agents.
Working perfectly. Go ahead, Mike.
All right, perfect. So I'd like to walk you guys through several examples of how our AI agents are actively, working and solving a lot of these challenges that we've been discussing throughout this webinar. So it really starts from a lot of different areas, and goal-driven autonomy, having the intelligence and integration across systems. I know we had a few questions come in over the Q&A around, do we point to any legal specific databases? One of the nice things about Tonkean, and Sagi mentioned this a little bit in his portion earlier, is that you guys have the security and the guardrails, to control what these agents have access to. So with that kind of as a stage, let me take a stab at showing you guys, a few of these examples in action. So I'm going to start with a contract review agent. And, as you can see, right, this becomes that point of entry for user questions, but it's not the only way that users can engage. And I'll show you that in a moment. But here I could say I have a contract I need to review, right? And what you'll notice here is as I type that simple prompt to the Tonkean AI front door, you'll notice that it's checking with the contract review agent, and it's actually cycling through multiple different agents to try to find the appropriate actions to assist that user with that query, right? Whatever it may be. In this case, because it engaged our contract review agent, it's actually prompting me, what files would you like assistance to review? So I can either drag and drop or browse to files. We'll say I have an NDA here that I received, that I want to have the legal team process a review of to kind of point out where we need to focus our efforts, as we go through additional details about this. So I can upload one document, multiple documents, and then process that for review by passing that document off to the agents and allowing it to come over top with all of its data sources and guidance and instructions to perform this task for me. And while that's processing, let me just kind of show you an example where users can engage this from any location. That was kind of one of the things Sagi was mentioning about, meeting users where they work, whether that's in Teams or Slack or via email. These AI agents can, monitor those various communication sources for these questions that users may have and bring that detail back to them. So as you can see, it's actually, processing our file and trying to generate our, comparison review. And ultimately, it'll find things like, details of where we need to focus our efforts, right? Ensuring that both parties are clearly identified and avoiding vague references. Here's some details that are more specific about where we need to look at red lines. So we want to include automatic inclusion of future entities and things like that, right? So what we're leveraging here is a controlled set of data sources where we can actually perform a comparison of this document as well. So here you can see it was analyzing against our standard contract template or contract policies for NDAs, and it's easily identified several issues that we should focus our attention on, right? So about bringing that data to users, the guardrails of what data sources these agents have the ability to access to perform these tasks is all within your control. I want to show you another example here related to NDAs and self-service. So in that one, we were actually reviewing a contract that might be an NDA that we received, but sometimes your users will need to create their own. So I could say I need a new NDA with Cisco. And depending on my prompt, this may go out and look at our NDA agent to search for existing NDAs that we may have. In this case, I'd specified in my prompt that I wanted a new NDA with Cisco. So that agent is coming back and prompting me to provide the additional information that it needs, right? So I could say, Frances Pomposo, Senior Director, Legal and Tech. Right, so I can provide the prompts and the responses to that AI agent, and then it can go out and create that document for me. So you'll see as that agent is processing its work, it's creating a standard NDA. The standard NDA with Cisco is being prepared. We'll provide next steps and send you a preview of the document when it's ready. Right, so in this case, you'll notice that it's filled in a lot of information. It only asked me for 2 pieces of information, right? The signer's name and their job title. But based on the conversation where I said I need a new NDA with Cisco, we're intelligently selecting that, from that conversation and leveraging that information where appropriate, right? Another thing to highlight here is the address information. You didn't see it ask me for any address details. And that's one of those powerful options about leveraging these agents in a continuous way, right? Allowing these agents to work together to find some information. In just a few moments, I'm going to show you one more example from a front end perspective, and then I want to show you what this looks like behind the scenes, so you can see how those controls are put in place and how we can actually string these different agents together to perform these complex tasks. So if I switch over here to our task scheduler, this might be another example that your legal teams are looking up billing information, or has a accounts payable invoice been paid. So I could ask a simple question of has Acme paid their invoice yet? Right, and then engaging these AI agents, or because I have the term invoice in there, it's actually already identified the appropriate agent to help find the answer to this user. It's going through our connected data source of various invoice details that we're connected to. This could be a receivable system or a payable system or a legal billing system, where you're looking for the current status of some of that information, right? And then here in a moment, once it's completed its analysis of the various invoices, it will provide a summary of that information with links to the various invoice documents, right? And this is a simple, Google sheet that we're pointing to with various, invoice records, right? But I can even see the details of these invoices, and the display that I'm presenting to users is completely configurable in our no-code solution as well. So, within that example, I could do things like, great, let me know when they do. Right. And this would be an example of these agents, again, going out. And in this case, it's, defining an action that I've asked that agent to follow up with. So you'll notice it's setting up monitoring for these specific invoices so that we'll continue to look at these invoices. And when we detect a change in that state, this agent can pick up and perform that notification action to the end user. So it's very, easy way for these users to engage and even create those follow-up tasks, right? Beyond the simple executing of instructions like we discussed. Now, I'm going to switch over here to the background, right, behind the scenes of the system. And these are just, some examples of our out-of-the-box agents around company policies. I believe there was a question in the chat earlier, about how do we guide these agents to look at our company policies to get the right information. So we actually have an agent that can perform that task in itself, looking at policy documents, looking at FAQ type documents to bring responses back to users and actually deflect intake altogether. When it's called for, right, we were looking at our contract review agent, where in this case, there's actions that need to be performed and tasks that need to be performed by those end users. If I look at the setup and the definition of this agent, you can see how simplistic these are, right? Defining the purpose of the agent is to help employees reviewing contracts received from customers, partners, or vendors, right? And here we have some detailed instructions. If I don't have the contract content, then I want to ask the user to upload that. And we're actually going to present them an interface, defining that connected interface that we want to present to the end user when it's needed, right? So they absolutely could start their question by uploading the file and kick off the process that way. Or if they just specify that they need a contract review, it's going to ask them to upload that document, right? And we have those guidelines and those knowledge sources. So this becomes very important with that intelligence and being able to integrate across systems and processes, right? Whatever knowledge sources we give this agent purview to, it can use and leverage based on the instructions and guidance that we're giving it to perform these tasks, right? So another example of that is our NDA agent. So this is the example we went through creating the new NDA. And as you can see, these modules within Tonkean are super simplistic, right? But in this case, we have, the AI agent where we can specify business group access. I believe there was a question also around, limiting access or the controls in place around what data users have access to see. So we have concept of business groups that we can restrict these agents to only perform actions for people within a given business group. Even beyond that, what data source those users can access. So in this case, we're leveraging our signed NDAs. And I mentioned if I hadn't specified a new NDA, it would look at our existing repository of NDAs to find the current one we have with Cisco. In that case, I specified a new NDA. So I've actually given the agent an autonomous skill. And this is kind of where a lot of the meat hits the road, or I guess the rubber meets the road, if you will. Defining, right, what are the specific, tasks that I want this agent to perform, right? And in this case, we're creating a standard NDA. So I've given it, access to our, standard NDA template file. And I've designated what fields I want the agent to, replace within that. And then we're allowing the agent to use its autonomy to, identify those values, right? So in this case, we have the AI context of the name of the counterparty, where it's pulling that out of that intake conversation that I had. It's guessing that the effective date when I'm asking for a new one is going to be, today's date, right? the address of the counterparty. This is a pretty cool one that might have missed, but I pointed out where that pulled the actual address of Cisco for us into that template without us having to search, right? And that is specifically, because we're giving this agent guidance to not ask the user. Don't ask the user for this information. Search the web instead for the headquarters address. And that's actually allowing us to engage a web researcher agent to actually find that information. So these agents themselves can, string together the other agents as resources to complete those tasks based on the guidance and instructions that we've given that agent. So I know I've kind of been talking for about 15 minutes or so. I think we're going to move on to a Q&A session, unless Sagi or Frances, you have anything to add?
I would just quickly add that, Mike keep mentioning the fact that this is simplistic and relatively easy, and the comparison here is for a more like structured workflow, or even anyone that ever saw how support chatbots look like. It's kind of all canned into what is the user ask, and then that's what we're going to answer. Versus in this case, you define the different things that you want, the capabilities, the tools that you want an agents to have. You give it a purpose. You give it some instructions if you want to. How do you want the response to look like, or things to do or not to do. But you don't have to kind of reinvent the wheel. If you go back to the policies, to the review one, the contract review one, I think it's the one you have there. The contract review guidelines knowledge source here is essentially a Google Drive with a few straightforward documents that are not necessarily written for the agent's benefit. It's just the doc you already have of, what are the type of limitation of liability, what is the jurisdiction that we prefer, what is the if it's an NDA, like how long does that apply for, 5 years, 7 years, like what is the preferred options. All of this just in plain regular Word document that you would have anyway probably, and all you need to do is essentially let the agent have access to it and instruct it to use it and when reviewing stuff. I know there was a question about can you do red lines, right? And so the way I want everyone to kind of think about it is there's different tools and different capabilities within the workflow that you can then give as a tool for the user. It's important because one way you can do it is essentially suggest a red line and then have the person click a button to create the red line, or you can give the agent a full tool to add the red line on a document, or you can do it conditionally, right? So that if this is being asked by a senior attorney, then they just go ahead and do it because they're going to review it anyway. Or if it's a junior, and so on and so forth, right? So the ability to actually control the details of the steps within the action is incredibly important for compliance and scale. But essentially, any action that can be done on any systems can be then be made available to the agent, and so it's very, very powerful with again relatively very little amount of effort, because a lot of the decision making and workflow, if you will, itself, what happens when, is actually done by the AI autonomously.
Okay, that sounds great. We have a couple of questions from the audience I thought that we could all take right now. I have quite a few about confidentiality. So let's try to combine them all. But is the product operating in a closed universe, so my information remains confidential? Throw it out to there. Yeah. Throw it out to the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think a big important concept to understand is specifically for Tonkean, we don't train any models on any customer data. In fact, for the agents capabilities. Specifically, we're not actually training any models. We also allow customers to use to pick and choose their models. By default, we have partner with OpenAI, but you can connect Gemini, connect to Anthropic, or connect to open source. Maybe some customers have themselves trained the model and connected to. The data does not being uploaded to that provider. Instead, it is passed, only the section of the data that is needed is passed as part of the context, as if the user, kind of like copy pasted in, where there's zero data retention on the other side. So, long story short, the data is not being stored nor being shared with the AI. Apart from the context window in which it's the message itself being sent. Obviously, if you want to review a contract, you need to have the AI see the contract in order to review it, right? But that's a very different than training the model.
Right. Does this integrate with ServiceNow?
Yes. We have integrations with hundreds of services. You guys can go to tonkean.com and check those out. ServiceNow and any or all of the common SaaS platforms are going to be there. And in addition, being a no-code platform, any new data source is something we can easily add, and the customers sometimes add themselves even.
Perfect. Do you have any specific agents that you would recommend for a small legal team to start with?
Yeah, funny enough, I think with agents, there's a massive value for smaller teams because that force multiplier that Frances mentioned early on. And so I think, even anything routine, but even those examples that we just saw are probably things that, with kind of making them your own and be more specific to kind of your work stream. Obviously, this is more like a generalized demo because, you never know who is watching. That is available. But maybe, Frances, you have some specific example you can add.
I think anything with like mailboxes, intake, or triage, where you have the data to kind of see how you would respond, or you have playbooks. Honestly, anything that you have a playbook or a documented process for, I think is pretty ripe for that. I think people should do experimentation and testing, obviously, and different companies have different risk profiles. But if there is a policy or procedure, you should at least be experimenting with that. Mailboxes are great. Intake, initial review, those things that are high volume, you can really kind of triage appropriately with whatever level of like human involvement you want.
Perfect. Maybe
I would add that, obviously everyone always can wish they had more people, right? That's like everyone think that, but when you're in that place where you're like, gosh, I wish I had like, two more people, a few more hands here. But not necessarily like, hey, I need like a very specifically skilled people, but more like generalists or even like entry level. That is almost like obvious that you should look at that. And I'm not saying don't get that entry level, but maybe that one entry level can now do the work of 5 entry level, right? That type of thing. That would be another comment.
Okay. It looks like we have time for one more. Here's a forward-thinking question. How far away do you think we are from being an AI being a trial partner and have it listen and evaluate testimony on the fly and pick out evidence in its database to counter or help the case at a trial during testimony, such as cross-examination?
I don't know if you have thoughts on that. I think our answers might be different, but from what I know from a technology perspective right now, I think there's components of that are happening. There is an area where when you're saying like a real-time trial partner, there's a lot of risk associated with that, where I don't think the technology or the legal industry, and this is my opinion, is there yet. I think if you're thinking about transcription of courtroom proceedings, that exists now. I think document search and retrieval, that exists now with like case law statuses, being able to query large databases. Basic analysis with human oversight does exist now. And again, I think there's ripe experimentation for like doing that with agents. The part that I don't think is there yet is really like the execution and playing the place of an attorney, which is kind of what that sounds like. And again, I'm not an attorney, but I know that piecing all of those together and the human judgment and not taking into account the nuances, which is so critical in trials, and the real-time reasoning, the reliability and trust, and like ethical and legal barriers, those are all things that I think limit it from being like today. But I think in in the near future, you're going to see iterations on that. But the legal industry in particular, there's some areas where that I don't think it's there yet, and for the right reasons.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. I think the limitation is actually not technology right now, which we could not have said a year ago, right? So like, I do think that I do think both from understanding real-time voice, as well as being able to crunch a lot of things and maybe kind of show suggestions or stuff. The technology is there. I think it's a matter of trust. Like, why are you hiring a lawyer to be in the trial? You want someone that has the nuance, like Frances, but also has the accountability and responsibility. And I think that would be a longer cycle than the technology cycle for a lot of those solutions. Doesn't mean that you can't find areas where it can save you a lot of, especially in preparation, especially in after the session, to kind of like have the retro and analysis and preparation for the next one, so on. There's a lot of leverage there as well.
Perfect.
Today. Yeah.
Well, it looks like that's all the time we have for today. If you did ask a question that didn't get answered, the speakers will respond via email within 24 to 48 hours, or you can connect with them via email or their LinkedIn profiles, which are provided on their bios on your console. If you registered for this webcast, you will receive a link to watch on demand, and that'll be tomorrow. So if you missed anything, you can rewatch it or share it with some colleagues. And I want to thank the speakers and our audience for everybody's time today. We hope you're able to take some valuable nuggets for your teams and have a fantastic rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.